I sat in the worn velvet armchair of my Victorian parlor, the one my late husband Thomas had restored with his own hands back in 1998. The afternoon light filtered through the lace curtains, casting soft patterns across the oak floorboards. A delicate porcelain cup of Earl Grey rested in my lap, steam curling upward like a whisper. Then the front door opened without a knock. Vanessa strode in first, heels clicking sharply against the wood. Her husband Richard followed, briefcase in hand, and behind them came a man I didn't recognize. Tailored suit, silver hair, the kind of face that charges $400 an hour just to sit down. "Oh, Mother," Vanessa said, voice smooth as chilled champagne. "We already transferred the entire trust fund yesterday. We only invited the family lawyer and the appraiser. You weren't needed." I didn't spill the tea. My fingers stayed perfectly steady around the cup. $4.2 million, she continued, as if reciting a grocery list. "Moved into a secure account under our management. For your own protection, of course. At 78, these things can slip away so easily." Richard cleared his throat and placed a thick manila envelope on the mahogany side table. "Standard procedure, Eleanor. We had the documents reviewed. Your signature was on file from last year's power of attorney update." The lawyer, Mr. Caldwell, he introduced himself, nodded once, professional and detached. "Mrs. Voss, the transfer was executed cleanly. The trust now lists Vanessa as sole trustee. Any questions can be directed through our office." I set the cup down. The porcelain made the faintest click against the saucer. "Questions?" I repeated quietly. "Yes, one. How exactly did you obtain my signature on a document I never saw?" Vanessa's smile didn't waver. It only sharpened at the edges. "Mother, please, don't make this difficult. We're doing this because we love you. Derek needs stability. His debts. Well, you know how young people are. And Richard's firm has been under pressure. This is family taking care of family." I looked at the envelope. My name was typed neatly on the front in black ink. No return address, just a small gold seal from Caldwell and Associates. Richard checked his watch. "We should be going. The appraiser will be here tomorrow to value the house. Just routine in case we need to make adjustments." They left as abruptly as they had arrived. The door clicked shut behind them, and the house settled back into silence. Only then did my pulse begin to quicken, not with fear, but with something colder. I opened the envelope slowly. Inside were two documents. The first was a formal notice confirming the trust fund transfer, $4,217,894.62 moved in full. The second was thinner, crisp white paper, bold header, eviction notice, 30 days. The property at 1427 Maplewood Lane, Evanston, Illinois, was to be vacated. Reason cited: owner no longer possesses legal capacity to manage affairs. Temporary guardianship pending court review. I read it twice. Then I folded both papers with deliberate care and placed them back inside the envelope. My hands did not shake, but something inside me, something that had spent decades keeping quiet, keeping the peace, keeping the family afloat, shifted. It didn't break. It simply locked into place like the tumblers of an old safe. I stood up, walked to the window, and watched their black Mercedes pull away down the tree-lined street. The lake glittered in the distance, indifferent and vast. 30 days. Well, that gave me exactly enough time. The following morning, the house felt heavier. I checked my phone at exactly 7:15 a.m., the hour the bank notification usually chimed. Nothing. The monthly transfer of $8,500, my allowance, wired from the trust fund since Thomas passed, simply did not arrive. I refreshed the screen twice. The balance stared back at me. $243.17. I closed the app. My fingers were steady. By 9 o'clock, I had brewed another pot of Earl Grey and carried the tray to the study. The roll-top desk waited, its surface cluttered with the neat stacks of paper I had kept for decades. Old bank statements, tax returns, every quarterly report from the brokerage that once managed the trust. I opened the bottom drawer and lifted out the accordion file labeled 2023 to 2025. Page by page, I began. The first irregularity appeared on statement number 14, a transfer of $42,000 to an account I did not recognize. The memo line read only, "Family expense, V." My eyes moved to the signature line. My name. But the loop on the capital E was wrong. Too round, too eager. I kept reading. By 11:30, I had a second stack. Transfers totaling $127,000 charged to my American Express Centurion card over the past 6 months. Saks, Fifth Avenue. A private jet charter to Aspen. A deposit at a marina in Door County for something called the Legacy Yacht Club. Each receipt bore the same forged signature. I set the papers down. The study was quiet except for the low tick of the grandfather clock in the hall. My phone rang at noon sharp. Vanessa's name flashed across the screen. I let it ring 4 times before I answered. "Mother," she said, bright and busy. "Just calling to check in. How are you holding up in that big old house all by yourself?" I did not answer right away. I let the silence stretch. "Well," she continued, "Richard and I are swamped. Derek's creditors are calling again. We had to move some funds around to keep the firm afloat. You understand." "I understand," I said. My voice was even. She laughed, short and satisfied. "You always were practical. Listen, that $8,500? We've paused it for now, just until the guardianship is sorted. We're saving the family from bankruptcy, Mother. You were becoming a burden. A sweet one, but still." A burden. The word landed like a coin dropped on marble. "I see," I replied. "Perfect. We'll send someone to help pack next week." The appraiser says the house could fetch $1.8 million after updates. Plenty to set you up in a nice assisted living place near us. You'll have friends your age. I looked out the window at the maple tree Thomas had planted the year Vanessa turned 10. Its leaves were just beginning to turn. "Friends my age," I echoed. "Exactly. Oh, and Mother, don't bother calling the bank. We've flagged the account for review. Standard procedure when capacity is in question." She ended the call with a cheerful, "Love you." I set the phone down beside the statements. The screen went dark. I spent the afternoon on the phone with my own bank branch in downtown Evanston. The manager, Mr. Ellison, had known me since 2007. His voice dropped when I described the charges. "Mrs. Voss, these are all post-dated to the period after your last in-person visit. The card was used in person at 3 locations you have not visited in years. We can freeze the card immediately." "Please do," I said. He hesitated. "There's something else. A hold has already been placed on the primary checking account. Request came from Caldwell and Associates. They cited your power of attorney." I thanked him and hung up. The light outside had shifted to late afternoon gold. I walked downstairs to the kitchen and poured the last of the tea. It had gone cold. I drank it anyway. That evening, I opened the hidden compartment in the desk. Inside lay a small black notebook I had not touched in 3 years. Every password, every account number, every safe deposit key. I copied what I needed into a fresh legal pad, writing in the same neat hand I once used for corporate ledgers. By 9 p.m., the pad held 12 pages of notes. Total unauthorized withdrawals, $127,000 on the card alone, plus the trust fund, plus the missing monthly support. The numbers formed a quiet, merciless column. I capped the pen. The doorbell rang at 10:15. I did not expect visitors. I opened the door to find a courier in a dark uniform. He handed me a slim envelope. "Mrs. Eleanor Voss?" I signed for it. He left. I closed the door and carried the envelope to the parlor. The same gold seal as yesterday. Caldwell and Associates. I opened it slowly. Inside was a single sheet, formal letterhead, bold type. Notice of intent to file. Mental incompetence lawsuit. filed on behalf of Vanessa Voss Harrington. Court date set for next Thursday. They would present medical affidavits. They would request immediate guardianship. They would ask the judge to strip me of every remaining right. I read the final paragraph twice. Then I folded the letter once, placed it on the side table, and walked to the window. The lake was black under the moon. Next Thursday. I had 6 days. The summons arrived 3 days later, but the freeze came first. I was in the kitchen at 8:45 a.m., slicing an apple with the same silver knife I had used for 42 years, when my phone buzzed. Bank alert. I wiped my hands on the linen towel and opened the message. Account 4782-1190, savings. $940,000 now under temporary administrative hold. Reason, pending guardianship petition, authorized by Richard Harrington, Esquire, acting under power of attorney. I stared at the screen until the numbers blurred into gray. $940,000. Money I had transferred from my 401k rollovers after Thomas died. Every penny earned from 31 years of reconciling pension ledgers at the retirement fund. Gone behind an electronic wall. I set the phone down beside the cutting board. The apple slice was still crisp in my hand. I ate it anyway. By 10 o'clock, I had dressed in the charcoal cardigan Thomas always said made me look like a banker on holiday. I drove the 10 minutes to the branch in downtown Evanston. Mr. Ellison met me in the small conference room, the one with the frosted glass door. His tie was slightly crooked, the way it got when he was nervous. "Mrs. Voss," he said, voice low. I tried to push back. The hold came through their attorney's office this morning. They filed an emergency motion yesterday afternoon. I nodded once. "Show me the paperwork." He slid a single sheet across the table. Richard's signature was bold at the bottom, next to the firm letterhead, Harrington and Associates. "Richard called me personally," Mr. Ellison added. "Said it was for your protection. Mentioned the mental incompetence filing." I folded the paper neatly and placed it in my purse. "Thank you, Mr. Ellison. I'll handle it." He hesitated. "If you need anything." "I know," I said. I drove home in silence. The lake road curved past the same maples that had shaded Vanessa's childhood bike rides. I parked in the carriage house and sat for a full minute before going inside. The doorbell rang at 11:20. I opened it to Derek. My grandson stood on the porch in a navy quarter zip and expensive sneakers, hair artfully tousled. He carried a paper bag from the bakery on Central Street. "Grandma," he said, flashing the same dimpled smile he used when he wanted something. "Brought you those cranberry scones you like. Thought we could talk." I stepped aside. "Come in." He followed me to the parlor, set the bag on the coffee table, and dropped into the armchair like he owned it. "Place looks good. Still got that old charm." His eyes flicked toward the hallway that led to the basement stairs. "Dad said the appraiser might need to check the foundation. Something about hidden storage?" I poured him a glass of water from the crystal pitcher. My hand did not tremble. "The foundation is fine, Derek. Built in 1897. Hasn't moved an inch." He laughed, too loud. "Yeah, well, Mom's worried about, stuff getting lost. Old papers, valuables. She mentioned a safe or something down there. For the family documents?" I sat across from him and folded my hands in my lap. "The only safe in this house is the one your grandfather installed in 2003. It holds my original marriage certificate and a few gold coins. Nothing more." His gaze darted again. "Right, cool. Just making sure everything's secure. With the guardianship coming up, we want to protect your assets. You know how it is." I studied him. The same boy I had taught to balance a checkbook at age 12 now looked at me like I was an inventory item. "Tell me, Derek," I said quietly, "how much do you owe the casinos in Indiana these days?" His smile faltered for half a second. "Grandma, that's not 280,000, I continued. "I still get the statements forwarded to the P.O. box you don't know about. The one I opened the week you turned 21. He shifted. "Mom said you'd understand. Family helps family." I let the silence stretch until the grandfather clock chimed the quarter hour. Family, I repeated. He stood up too quickly. Anyway, I should go. Mom's waiting on the lawyer. We'll see you in court, yeah? Love you. The door closed behind him. I waited until his car disappeared down Maplewood Lane, then walked to the basement stairs. The safe was exactly where it had always been, behind the false panel beside the wine rack. I opened it and removed the black USB drive I had prepared 2 nights earlier. Every scanned bank statement from 2022 onward. Every email Richard had sent me under the pretense of helping with taxes. I had started recording every call since the trust fund transfer. The device held 43 audio files now. Back upstairs, I sat at the roll-top desk and opened my laptop. The brokerage portal still worked on my personal login, the one they hadn't frozen yet. I navigated to the investment summary. 6 blue-chip stocks sold without authorization. IBM, Johnson & Johnson, Procter & Gamble. Executed last month. Total proceeds wired to an account in Vanessa's name. Realized loss, $312,000. I stared at the red numbers until they burned behind my eyes. Those shares had been my safety net, the ones I had bought the year Vanessa graduated law school, telling her the dividends would pay for her first house. My phone rang. Vanessa. I pressed record before I answered. "Mother," she said, voice bright, "Derek said you seemed a little confused today. The safe downstairs, he couldn't find it. You didn't give him the combination, did you?" I kept my tone even. "There is no combination he needs." She sighed the way she used to when I corrected her math homework. "We're only trying to help. The court date is Thursday. The judge will see how scattered you've become. Selling those stocks was necessary. Richard's firm needed bridge financing." $312,000, I said. A pause. "It's just money, Mother. You have the house. We'll take care of everything." I ended the call without another word and saved the recording as file number 44. That afternoon, I printed everything. 47 pages of bank statements, 23 emails, the brokerage confirmations. I placed them in a fresh accordion file and labeled it Evidence Elder Financial Abuse. At 4:30 p.m., the mail slot clattered. I walked to the foyer and picked up the envelope. Thick, official, Cook County Circuit Court seal in the upper left. I opened it slowly. Inside was the formal summons. Case number 2026-CH-01472. Petitioner, Vanessa Voss Harrington. Respondent, Eleanor Voss. Petition for adjudication of disability and appointment of guardian of the person and estate. They were asking the court to declare me mentally incompetent. They wanted full control. I read the date of the hearing. Thursday, 9 a.m. Then I folded the summons once, placed it on top of the evidence file, and carried both to the desk. I sat down, opened my notebook, and wrote a single line at the top of a fresh page. Attorney Thomas Whitaker, Elder Law Specialist, Chicago. The lake outside the window had turned the color of steel. Thursday was 4 days away. I picked up the phone at 6:30 the next morning. The number for Thomas Whitaker, Elder Law, was already on my legal pad. I had found it in the yellowed directory I kept in the desk drawer, the one with the embossed cover from 2019. His office answered on the second ring. "Mr. Whitaker's schedule is full," the receptionist began. "Tell him it's Eleanor Voss," I said. "Evanston. Emergency guardianship petition filed against me yesterday." 30 seconds later, he was on the line. His voice was calm, measured, the kind that had probably won more cases than most lawyers twice his age. "Mrs. Voss, I can see you at 10. Bring everything." I arrived at his loop office at 9:55. The building smelled of polished marble and fresh coffee. Whitaker was 62, silver at the temples, wearing a navy suit that cost more than my monthly allowance used to be. He shook my hand once, firm, and led me into a conference room lined with case files. "Start from the beginning," he said, sliding a yellow legal pad across the table. I opened the accordion file. 47 pages of bank statements landed between us like a deck of cards. He scanned the top sheet. His pen stopped mid-note. "Trust fund transfer," I said. $4.2 million moved in one day. Then another $1.85 million withdrawn from the residual account over the following 6 weeks. All routed to Vanessa Voss Harrington's personal checking at Chase. Memo lines read, "Family management fee. No supporting invoices." Whitaker flipped pages. His eyebrows rose once, then settled back into professional neutrality. $1.85 million. That's not a fee, that's a raid. I pointed to the next stack. Centurion card charges, $127,000. Jet charter, yacht club dues, jewelry, all signed with my name. But I was in physical therapy the day they claim I bought the Cartier watch. He made a note. "Forgery. We'll get a handwriting expert. What about the savings hold?" $940,000 frozen yesterday. Richard Harrington's signature on the emergency motion. Whitaker leaned back. "They're building a moat, but moats have leaks." I told him about the blue chip sales. $312,000 lost in realized losses because they sold at the bottom of a dip. He wrote faster. Then I paused. The memory came uninvited, sharp as the knife I used on apples. 20 years ago, I said, voice low. Vanessa needed $48,000 for her final year at Northwestern. Thomas had just died. I sold my engagement ring. 2.5-carat diamond, appraised at $52,000. I got $48,500. Never told her. She thought the money came from life insurance. Whitaker looked up. Something shifted in his eyes, not pity, just recognition. "And now she's taking the rest." I nodded once. "I want it back, all of it, plus interest, plus damages." We spent the next hour mapping the counter. Whitaker outlined the complaint. Breach of fiduciary duty, elder financial exploitation under Illinois Statute 320 ILCS 20, conversion, and fraud. He would file by close of business tomorrow. "But we need more," he said. "Tax returns. If Richard touched the trust, there may be unreported income. IRS doesn't like that." I opened the final folder. I had pulled the last 3 years of joint filings from the safe the night before. Page after page of Schedule E, K-1s, and one suspicious line on Richard's personal return. $280,000 listed as consulting income from an offshore entity in the Cayman Islands, I said. But the trust never authorized any consulting, and the entity name matches the account Vanessa used for the $1.85 million transfer. Whitaker's pen froze. A slow smile touched the corner of his mouth. "Wire fraud. Possible tax evasion. That's federal. We copy the U.S. attorney." He slid a retainer agreement across the table. $25,000. I signed without hesitation. The check cleared from my last unfrozen brokerage account, the one they still didn't know existed. We shook hands again at the door. "Thursday's hearing is theirs," he said, "but Friday will be ours." I drove home through the October light. The maples along Sheridan Road burned red and gold. I parked in the carriage house and sat for a long minute, listening to the engine tick as it cooled. The doorbell rang at 4:20. Derek stood on the porch again, this time holding a manila envelope. His smile was tighter than yesterday. "Grandma, Mom asked me to drop these off. Just some papers to review. Nothing major." I let him inside but did not offer tea. He set the envelope on the coffee table. "It's the guardianship consent form. If you sign, the judge will see you're cooperative. Makes everything easier." I looked at him. "Easier for whom?" He shifted his weight. "For all of us. Look, the house is old, maintenance is expensive, but if you sign today, we'll let you stay another year. Full 12 months. Mom said so." Another year. The words hung in the air like smoke. I picked up the envelope. The paper inside was thick, the kind lawyers use when they want to intimidate. At the bottom, 2 signature lines, mine and the notary's. Derek leaned in, voice dropping like we were sharing a secret. "Bang Wai,
Nếu bà ký giấy này, chúng cháu sẽ cho bà ở lại nhà thêm 1 năm.
He caught himself half a second too late. The Vietnamese slipped out, the phrase I had taught him as a boy when he spent summers here. His face flushed. I met his eyes. My voice stayed perfectly even. 1 year, I repeated. He nodded quickly. Yeah, exactly. Sign it and you get the full year, promise. I set the papers down unopened. Derek backed toward the door. Think about it. Mom's expecting good news. The door clicked shut behind him. I carried the envelope to the roll-top desk and placed it beside the evidence file. The numbers on my legal pad stared back at me. 1.85 million, 312,000, 280,000 in unreported Cayman income. I picked up the pen and drew a single line under the final total. $4.7 million. That was what they owed me, and Thursday was only 2 days away. The courthouse smelled of polished wood and old paper. I arrived at 8:45 a.m. on Thursday, the charcoal cardigan buttoned to the throat, my evidence file under one arm. Thomas Whitaker waited in the marble lobby. He gave a single nod. Stay calm, he said. They're presenting first. We entered courtroom 214. Vanessa sat at the petitioner's table in a cream silk blouse, Richard beside her in his best suit. Their lawyer, Caldwell, had 3 binders open. Derek was not there. Smart. The judge, a woman in her late 50s named Harlan, called the case. Petition for adjudication of disability. Proceed. Caldwell stood. His voice rolled out smooth and certain. Your Honor, Mrs. Eleanor Voss is 78. Medical affidavits show early cognitive decline. The trust fund transfer was necessary to protect assets. Bank statements confirm unauthorized activity. Clear signs of confusion. He slid copies across. Forged signatures. Altered memos. A doctor's note from a psychiatrist I had never met. Whitaker objected twice. The judge overruled both. I sat perfectly still. My hands rested on the table, fingers laced. Inside, the cold thing that had locked into place the day they served the eviction notice grew sharper. Judge Harlan leaned forward. Mrs. Voss, do you understand the nature of these proceedings? I met her eyes. Yes, Your Honor. My daughter is attempting to seize $4.2 million in trust assets and freeze the rest. Vanessa made a soft sound of concern. Mother, please. This is for your own good. The judge reviewed the papers for 4 long minutes. Then she spoke. Based on the affidavits and the documented transfers, I am granting a temporary restraining order. Mrs. Voss is prohibited from accessing any joint or trust-linked accounts until the full hearing. Guardianship petition moves forward. Evaluation ordered within 7 days. The gavel came down. I did not flinch. Whitaker touched my elbow as we left. This is round 1. We file our counter motion Monday. Outside on the courthouse steps, the wind off the lake cut cold. Vanessa and Richard passed me without a word. Her chin was high. His hand rested on her lower back like a victory lap. I drove home alone. The mental evaluation was scheduled for the following Tuesday at a private clinic in Wilmette. Vanessa arranged it. She sent a car. The driver wore a black uniform and did not speak. The clinic smelled of antiseptic and expensive leather. Dr. Lena Hargrove greeted me with a professional smile. Her office had abstract art on the walls and a large window overlooking a manicured lawn. Mrs. Voss, she said, this is just a conversation. Your daughter expressed concern about memory lapses. I sat in the wingback chair. My memory is fine, doctor. She opened a folder. Let's start simple. Can you tell me today's date? I answered correctly. She asked about recent events, the trust transfer, the house. Each question twisted slightly, testing for confusion. Halfway through, she paused. Your daughter mentioned you sold stocks at a loss recently. $312,000. Do you recall authorizing that? I looked at her. I did not authorize it. The sales were executed without my knowledge. Dr. Hargrove made a note. Her pen moved slowly. And the Centurion card charges over $127,000 in 6 months. Yacht club, private jets, jewelry. You remember making those purchases? No, I said, because I did not make them. She closed the folder. Thank you, Mrs. Voss. That will be all. I knew the report would not favor me. Vanessa had chosen the doctor. The system was already tilting. Back home, I opened the mail. A new envelope from American Express. Platinum card statement. I had not touched that card in 14 months. The balance due, $89,000. 1 month. Saks Fifth Avenue, $22,000. A boutique in Aspen, $14,000. A single charge at Tiffany & Co., $31,000 for something listed only as custom piece. I laid the statement flat on the desk. The numbers did not lie. I picked up the phone and dialed the number I had copied from the internet 2 nights earlier. Federal Bureau of Investigation, Chicago Field Office, Elder Financial Exploitation Hotline. A woman answered. I gave my name and case number. I am reporting suspected elder financial abuse, I said. My voice stayed level. My daughter and son-in-law have transferred $4.2 million from a trust fund, forged signatures, unauthorized card charges totaling $216,000 across accounts. I have bank statements, emails, and audio recordings. The agent took notes. We'll open a file, Mrs. Voss. An investigator will contact you within 48 hours. I hung up. The house was quiet again. The grandfather clock ticked in the hall. I walked to the kitchen and poured a glass of water. It tasted flat. At 6:17 p.m., my phone buzzed. Bank alert from the last remaining personal account, the one holding $280,000 in municipal bonds I had kept separate for decades. I opened it. Account 3194-7721, brokerage, $280,000 now under full administrative freeze. Reason? Expanded court order per guardianship petition. All remaining assets restricted pending final adjudication. I read the message 3 times. Every account, every last dollar I still controlled. Frozen. The lake outside had gone black. I set the phone down beside the platinum card statement and the $89,000 charges. Monday was 3 days away. Whitaker had said our counter motion would land like a hammer. I hoped he was right, because right now the hammer felt very far away. Monday arrived with frost on the window panes. I woke at 5:45, made the Earl Grey exactly as always, 3 minutes steep, 1 teaspoon honey, and carried the tray to the roll-top desk. The evidence file now held 62 pages. I had spent the weekend cross-referencing every line. Total unauthorized transfers from the trust fund, $4,217,894.62. Centurion card forgery, $127,400. Platinum card charges, $89,000. Blue chip sales at a loss, $312,000. Frozen savings and brokerage accounts, $1,220,000 in combined principal and accrued interest. I added the final column on a fresh legal pad. The sum landed at $3,766,294.62. Rounded up with statutory damages and interest at 8%, it reached $4.1 million. I capped the pen. The number did not comfort me. It simply existed, cold and exact, like the balance sheet of a company I had once audited. At 8 o'clock, I drove to Thomas Whitaker's office. He met me in the same conference room. 3 new binders waited on the table. Counter-complaint is ready, he said, sliding the top binder toward me. Elder financial exploitation, breach of fiduciary duty, conversion, forgery, and wire fraud. We're adding a request for a restraining order against Vanessa and Richard. No contact, no access to the property, effective immediately upon filing. I opened the binder. Page 1 listed every transaction with dates, amounts, and account numbers. My forged signatures were highlighted in red. Next to each was the original document I had kept in the safe, the real signature from 2023. Loop on the E slightly flattened, the way my hand had trembled the month after Thomas's funeral. Handwriting expert confirms forgery on all 6 documents, Whitaker continued. We subpoenaed the bank's security footage for the card charges. You appear in none of them. Vanessa does, twice. He tapped the final section. IRS referral is attached. Richard's Cayman consulting income matches the exact dollar amount he pulled from the trust.
They'll want to talk to him.
I closed the binder. File it. Whitaker studied me for a moment. The temporary guardianship is still in place until the full hearing, but once this lands, the judge will have to reconsider. We're requesting an expedited hearing for next week. Good, I said. He hesitated. Mrs. Voss, most clients in your position are angry, loud. You're very quiet. I met his eyes. Anger is inefficient. I prefer precision. He nodded once, as if that answered everything. I left his office at 9:30 and drove straight to the county clerk's window. The clerk scanned the thick packet, stamped each page, and handed me the receipt. Case number updated. Countersuit filed. Back home, I changed into the same charcoal cardigan and sat at the kitchen table with the restraining order draft. I read every clause aloud, voice low and even, testing how the words would sound in court. No contact within 500 feet, no discussion of finances, no entry onto 1427 Maplewood Lane without written permission from me. I signed the verification page myself. The ink dried in a perfect line. At 11:17, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered on speaker. Mrs. Voss? A woman's voice, professional. Special Agent Reyes, FBI Chicago. We received your elder exploitation report. I'd like to schedule a formal interview tomorrow at 10. Bring the originals. I confirmed the time and hung up. The house felt different now. Not lighter exactly, just aligned. Like the old Victorian had decided to stand straighter. I spent the afternoon in the basement. The false panel behind the wine rack opened with the same soft click it always had. I removed the black USB drive and copied its entire contents to a fresh drive. 47 audio files, every phone call since the trust transfer. The last one was Derek's slip, the Vietnamese phrase he thought I would not catch. I labeled the new drive FBI Backup and placed it in a padded envelope. Upstairs again, I checked the brokerage portal one final time. Still frozen. The red numbers stared back without apology. I closed the laptop. The restraining order would be served on Vanessa and Richard by certified mail tomorrow. Whitaker had promised personal service at their office if needed. I pictured the moment the process server handed Richard the papers in front of his partners. The thought did not bring satisfaction. Only the quiet click of another tumbler falling into place. At 6:42, the landline rang. The one I still kept because it had been Thomas's number since 1997. Vanessa's name appeared on the caller ID. I let it ring twice before I picked up. "Mother," she said, voice syrupy with triumph. "I heard you tried to fight back. Cute. The judge saw right through it. Guardianship is locked in until the evaluation report comes back." I said nothing. She laughed softly. Richard spoke to the clerk. "Your little counter motion? It'll take weeks to even get calendared. By then, the house will be listed. We already have a buyer lined up. Cash offer $1.9 million. After commissions and your new assisted living deposit, there'll be enough left for a nice studio. You'll be comfortable." I remained silent. "Oh, and Mother," her tone sharpened, "stop calling the FBI. It's embarrassing. Derek saw the agent's card on your table. Really? At your age? You're only making this harder on yourself." I finally spoke. One word. "Interesting." She paused. "What?" I let the silence stretch 3 full seconds. "The restraining order will be served tomorrow morning. 500 feet, Vanessa. No contact, no entry. Effective immediately after the judge signs it at 9 a.m. Her breath caught. "You're bluffing." "No," I said. "I'm calculating. I could hear Richard in the background, voice low and urgent. Vanessa's next words came out clipped. "Everything is about to be mine, Mother. The trust, the house, all of it. You're old. Rest. Let the adults handle it." I ended the call without another sound. The line went dead. I placed the receiver back in its cradle. The grandfather clock in the hall struck 7. Tomorrow, the FBI would have the originals. The day after that, the hearing would shift. And somewhere in the next 72 hours, the numbers I had tallied so carefully would finally be presented under oath. I walked to the window. The lake was a sheet of black glass under the rising moon. Everything was about to be mine again. Not theirs, mine. The courtroom smelled of lemon polish and tension. I arrived at 8:30 a.m. sharp, the same charcoal cardigan buttoned to the throat, the accordion file now 71 pages thick under my arm. Thomas Whitaker stood beside me in the marble hallway. His eyes were sharp. "Today it ends," he said. We entered courtroom 214. Judge Harlan already sat on the bench. Vanessa and Richard occupied the petitioner's table. Caldwell looked confident until he saw the size of my binder. Derek sat behind them, pale. "Counter-complaint hearing," the judge announced. "Mrs. Voss, you may proceed." Whitaker stood. "Your Honor, we move to dismiss the guardianship petition in its entirety. We further request immediate return of all assets, plus treble damages under the Illinois Elder Abuse Act. Evidence will show systematic fraud exceeding $4.1 million. Caldwell objected. The judge waved it aside. "Let's see it." I remained seated. My hands rested flat on the table. Inside, the cold calculation ticked like the grandfather clock at home. Whitaker opened the binder. Page 1 landed on the clerk's desk with a soft thud. Exhibit A, 47 bank statements. Trust fund of $4,217,894.62 transferred in full on October 3rd without authorization. Signature forged. Handwriting expert confirms mismatch on every loop of the capital E. He flipped to the next section. Exhibit B, Centurion card. $127,400 in 6 months. Yacht club dues. Private jet to Aspen. None of the charges appear on security footage where Mrs. Voss was physically present. Vanessa Voss Harrington does. Twice. Vanessa's face stayed composed. Barely. Exhibit C, Platinum card. $89,000 in 1 month. Tiffany custom piece. Saks Fifth Avenue. All post-dated to the guardianship motion. Richard shifted in his chair. Whitaker's voice never rose. Exhibit D, $312,000 in blue-chip stock sales executed at market low without consent. Proceeds wired directly to Vanessa's personal Chase account. He paused. The courtroom was silent except for the faint scratch of the court reporter's keys. And now, Exhibit E. He slid the USB drive across. 47 audio recordings, every call since the trust transfer. The last one is particularly instructive. The clerk plugged it in. The speakers crackled. Derek's voice filled the room, clear and unmistakable. "Bà ngoại, nếu bà ký giấy này, chúng cháu sẽ cho bà ở lại nhà thêm 1 năm. Then my own voice, steady. 1 year. Derek's face drained of color. Vanessa whispered something sharp to Richard. He shook his head once, tight. Whitaker continued. But the real damage is here. He placed the final stack on the bench. 23 emails and wire confirmations. $2.4 million transferred from the trust to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. Entity name, Harrington Consulting Limited. Richard Harrington listed as beneficial owner. Same entity he claimed as consulting income on his last 3 tax returns. Unreported to the IRS. Judge Harlan leaned forward. Her eyes narrowed at the wire transfer logs. 2.4 million, she repeated slowly. Yes, Your Honor, Whitaker said. Wire fraud. Clear violation of 18 U.S.C. Section 1343. We have already forwarded the complete package to the U.S. Attorney's Office and the FBI. Special Agent Reyes is present in the gallery. A woman in a dark suit nodded once from the back row. Vanessa's hands clenched on the table. Her manicure looked suddenly cheap under the fluorescent lights. Richard's jaw tightened so hard I heard the faint click of teeth. I stood. The judge looked at me. "Mrs. Voss, do you have anything to add before I rule?" I stepped to the podium. My voice carried, quiet and exact. 20 years ago, I sold my engagement ring so my daughter could finish law school. 2.5 carats, $48,500. I never told her. She thought it was life insurance. I looked directly at Vanessa. Today, she took the rest. $4.1 million. Forged, hidden, offshore. I am not confused, Your Honor. I am finished being robbed. I sat down. Judge Harlan was silent for 10 full seconds. She flipped through the final pages again. The courtroom held its breath. "Mr. Caldwell," she said at last, "your client's actions show a pattern of exploitation that shocks the conscience of this court." Vanessa's mouth opened, closed. No sound came out. The judge turned to me. "Mrs. Voss, the temporary guardianship is dissolved. All assets are to be returned immediately, including the trust fund in full. The court awards compensatory damages of $4,217,894.62, plus interest at 8% per annum, plus statutory treble damages under the Elder Abuse Act. Total judgment, $12,653,683.86, payable within 30 days. Richard's face went gray. Vanessa whispered, "No." Judge Harlan raised a hand. "Furthermore, this matter is referred to the Criminal Division for immediate review of wire fraud and forgery charges. Bailiff, please escort Mr. and Mrs. Harrington to the clerk's office to sign the asset return order. They are prohibited from leaving the building until the restraining order is entered." She banged the gavel once. "Court is in recess pending criminal consultation." The room erupted in low murmurs. Agent Reyes stood and moved toward the petitioner's table. I did not smile. I simply gathered my file, closed the clasp with a soft click, and walked out into the hallway. Vanessa and Richard remained seated, frozen. Their lawyer was already on his phone, voice low and frantic. Outside on the courthouse steps, the October wind off Lake Michigan cut clean. I pulled the collar of my cardigan closer and looked across the street to where my car waited. The judgment was $12,653,683.86. They would have to sell everything: the Aspen condo, the yacht club membership, even the house they had planned to flip. I had won. But I was not done. The FBI interview was scheduled for tomorrow morning, and I still had one more number to deliver. The days after the hearing blurred into a quiet machinery of enforcement. I sat in the Victorian parlor at exactly 7:15 the following morning. The same worn velvet armchair, the same porcelain cup of Earl Grey steaming in my lap. The lake beyond the lace curtains was calm, silver under a pale October sun. My phone lay on the side table. It had not stopped buzzing. First came the wire from the trust fund. $4,217,894.62. Returned in full, plus 8% interest accrued over the 37 days of theft, $248,000. The bank app refreshed at 8:03 a.m. The balance appeared without fanfare. Clean. Whole. I did not smile. I simply set the cup down and noted the figure in my legal pad. At 9:12, the next transfer hit. The savings account. $940,000 unfrozen. Then the brokerage. $280,000 in municipal bonds, plus the blue chip portfolio restored at current market value. No more red loss column. $312,000 made whole through the judgment. By noon, the total restored balance read $12,653,683.86, exactly as Judge Harlan had ordered. The court clerk's email arrived at 1:17 p.m. Asset return order executed. Vanessa and Richard had signed under oath. Their signatures looked shaky on the scanned PDF. I closed the laptop. The real collapse came in the afternoon papers. A small article in the Chicago Tribune, page 3 of the business section. Evanston couple faces federal wire fraud probe in elder exploitation case. The headline was clinical. The details were not. $2.4 million traced to Harrington Consulting Limited in the Caymans. Richard's name on the beneficial ownership filing. The U.S. Attorney's Office confirmed an active investigation. I read it once, folded the paper neatly, and placed it beside the teacup. Vanessa called at 3:42. I let it ring 6 times. When I answered, her voice cracked like thin ice. "Mother, please. The house in Winnetka is already under contract. We need 30 days to close. The judgment. It's everything. Richard's partners voted him out this morning. Temporary suspension of his law license. They're saying elder fraud on the bar complaint." I listened without interrupting. "Mother, we're ruined. Derek's creditors are circling. The yacht club revoked the membership yesterday. The Aspen condo goes on the market tomorrow. Cash only. We'll be lucky to clear $800,000 after the liens." I took a slow sip of tea. The bergamot was sharp on my tongue. "Vanessa," I said at last. My voice remained even. "You transferred $4.2 million. You forged my name 6 times. You spent $127,000 on my Centurion card and $89,000 on the Platinum. You sold my safety net at a $312,000 loss. You told the court I was incompetent while you wired $2.4 million to the Caymans." She drew a shaky breath. "I was trying to protect the family." "No," I cut in. One word, short, final. "You were stealing." Silence stretched across the line. I could hear Richard in the background, muttering something about bankruptcy counsel. I continued. "The restraining order remains, 500 feet. Do not call again. Do not drive down Maplewood Lane. The Victorian is mine. The trust is mine. Everything you touched is now accounted for." I ended the call. The phone stayed silent after that. 3 weeks later, the final pieces fell. Richard surrendered his law license for 6 months pending full investigation. The Bar Association cited moral turpitude. Vanessa listed their Winnetka house for $1.4 million. It sold in 4 days for $1.1. After the judgment lien and the IRS notice that had arrived by certified mail, they cleared less than $200,000. Derek moved back in with them temporarily. The article said he had filed for personal bankruptcy the same week. Casino debts finally caught up. I never asked for details. I did not need them. The FBI closed their file with a quiet letter. Charges were pending against both. The U.S. Attorney's Office would decide by spring. I had given them everything. The rest was theirs to prosecute. On a crisp Tuesday afternoon, I walked downstairs to the basement one last time. The false panel behind the wine rack opened smoothly. I removed the original black USB drive and placed it in the safe beside my restored marriage certificate. The 2.5-carat diamond ring I had sold 20 years ago was gone forever. But the money it had bought had come home multiplied. I locked the safe. Upstairs, I opened every window in the parlor. Cold lake air swept through, carrying the scent of turning maples. I brewed fresh Earl Grey, carried the tray to the velvet armchair, and sat. The house was quiet. No eviction notice on the table, no frozen accounts, no forged signatures waiting in the mail. $12,653,683.86 sat in accounts under my sole control. A new trust fund, drafted by Thomas Whitaker himself, listed only one beneficiary, Eleanor Voss. Irrevocable. I lifted the cup. The porcelain felt warm against my fingers. Steam curled upward. I had not cried once through the entire ordeal. Not when the trust vanished, not when the eviction notice arrived, not even when the judge read the judgment aloud. Tears were inefficient. They clouded the numbers. Now there was only the faint clink of the spoon against the saucer and the distant call of gulls over the water. I had given decades to that family. My career, my health, my ring, my silence. They had taken everything they could reach, and I had taken it back with interest. No forgiveness, no late-night reconciliations, no holiday cards. Only the clean line of a bank balance and the soft tick of the grandfather clock that Thomas had wound every Sunday for 39 years. This was the power they never understood. Not money, the quiet decision to stop giving it away. I finished the tea. The cup clicked gently into the saucer. Outside, the maple Thomas planted the year Vanessa turned 10 blazed red against the sky. It would stand another century. So would this house. So would I. If you've stayed with me until the end, you already know the truth. Money can buy houses and yachts and private jets. It cannot buy back the moment someone looks at you and decides you are no longer worth protecting. Leave a comment below. Have you ever watched someone rewrite the rules of a family ledger with nothing but patience and paper? Tell me your number, the one that finally made the silence louder than any scream. And if this story settled something in your chest, hit like, subscribe, turn on notifications. There are more ledgers out there waiting to be balanced. I'll see you in the next one.